This story begins with two students named Himeno Kimihara and Nozomi Gokuraku. The two begin kissing in front of the entire class, leaving everyone shocked. Nozomi, embarrassed by what happened, touches her lips and reminds Himeno that it is just an act, so she didn't have to kiss her for real. Himeno blushes and reminds her that the kiss was part of the acting script, but the others, not being sure about it, decide to check their scripts and find out that it is not true. Nozomi notices that there is an extra line that is handwritten, realizing that someone had planned that. The class deny being responsible and she believes them, since the scripts were handed in that same day. Then Himeno reveals that her script was given to her by Makoto Komori. He was hiding behind his classmates trying to escape, but Nozomi stops him by kicking him in the face. In that moment, a flashback is shown in which the students distribute the characters. First, Makoto was cast as the prince and Himeno as the princess. He, being happy with the role and the classmate he got, decides to give the script to Himeno personally. But while he was leaving, a student arrived to remind him that he owes him something, for which he is quickly silenced by Komori. Thanks to that, the students discover that he cheated through payoffs, so they decide to take the role away from Komori to finally give it to Nozomi. Later, after class, Himeno and her friends talk about the rehearsal and the strictness of the delegate. And again, they touch the subject of the kiss. Both Nozomi and Himeno blush, so they try not to look at each other. So it changed the subject. Kyuko Naraku, the girl who accompanies them, eulogizes Himeno's performance, and it's then that she tells that in all her school life she has acted as a princess, including kindergarten, believing that she is destined for that role. The next day, Himeno puts on her costume and is amazed at how nice it is. It is then that Nozomi explains that the performance takes place in Scandinavia, and that she used references from various places in order to create her costume. But the students ignore her explanation because she goes on too long in her explanation, so she ends up boring them, at which point other students come in to set up the scenario. Himeno tried out the stage beams, but because she was not confident she was afraid they would break, the delegate noticed this, so she asked the students to reinforce it. And when the scenario was finally ready, everyone started practicing their roles. Several days later, the performance took place in the school theater. Nozomi, Himeno, and the rest of the class began their acting. Everything was going well until the climax of the performance arrived. The whole audience was anxiously waiting for the kiss, but suddenly, the scenario breaks, which causes them to fall. But the protagonist manages to catch her companion in the air and skillfully manages to land safely. The two looked at each other and Nozomi kissed the protagonist on the cheek. In the afternoon, Himeno, Nozomi, and Kyuko go walking on the street talking about the accident, glad that the audience liked the performance, to the point where they were waving them around the school and started joking about the kiss, annoying Kyuko, who seemed to be jealous of the two. The next day, everyone goes to the class where they talk about the origin of humans. It is explained that life started from fish. From there, they evolved into reptiles, then dinosaurs, birds, mice, and finally monkeys. The human species is divided into 4 classes: demon person, winged person, centaurs, and mermaids. It's also said that the difference in appearance between the 4 classes has caused wars and destruction in the past, and if the amphibians had survived, there would be humans as we know them, and they would not have such a serious problem of discrimination. Later in gym class, Kyuko starts complaining to her friends about why they all have to run the same kilometers. Nozomi starts to bother her for being skinny and for not exercising, which makes her very tired. She gets annoyed and tries to chase her to hit her, but she couldn't catch her because she was too tired. Nozomi and Himeno were worried about her physical condition, so the protagonist offered to carry her, but Kyuko refused, arguing that she would be accused of discrimination and would be sent to the correctional center. Nozomi calls her exaggerated, but Nozomi comments that in the past, centaurs were the warriors of the country and sometimes they were slaves that people used to ride, and that's why after that the present laws were created, revealing that just talking about it is illegal. They continued running until Kyuko stopped them, asking Himeno how fast she could run. She answered that she could run 100 meters in only 9 seconds. Knowing that, Kyuko asked her to try, and then the proto ran to the traffic light, but her friends got worried and shouted for her to stop. At that moment, a car crosses and Himeno notices and manages to jump, avoiding the car. The driver stops scared and the protagonist apologizes and runs away nervously from there. The girls go with her and praise her for her speed, so her friend comments that she could shine if she joins the athletics club, but she replies that she already tried and failed because the events are divided by race and the only sport where all races can join is basketball, but she is clumsy for that sport. The 3 are stopped by some students who scold them because they have to get to school before lunch, so Nozomi proposes to use a shortcut and they manage to get to school on time. After the run, the results of the exams are shown and only students with 300 points could pass. Nozomi was the only one with 299 points and disappointedly hugged Himeno, while Kyuko teased her for revenge. We meet Himeno's mother, who is talking to a friend about her husband and daughter and realizes that her friend is interested in knowing about her daughter. Switching scenes, Nozomi is in a bookstore, and on her way she sees a magazine in which there was a girl very similar to Himeno modeling for a clothing company, which leaves her thinking. At that moment, she meets her classmates, and one of them suggests her to be a model too, so she can be with her friend, but she flatly refuses. Because of this, the girl decides to extort her by telling her that she can tell the school what her friend does after school, since the rules say that it is not allowed to work after school, and having no choice, Nozomi accepts without any further ado. Already at her classmate's house, Nozomi tries on clothes that her classmate gives her, and while one of them looks at a magazine at that moment, she realizes that they are just using her as a doll to try on clothes, so she tries to escape from there, but the girls stop her, reminding her that they can tell on her friend. The next day at school, Himeno asks her friend why she looks depressed. That's why she asks her to tell her the truth, and Kyuko shows her the magazine where she appears, in addition to showing her the school rules. Himeno explains that the editor of the magazine is a friend of her mother, and that her mother asked her to help her to be a Centaur model, since there were not many in Japan. Her friend suggests that she should become a model when she finishes her studies, but she replies that she really wants to be a doctor, even though she's afraid of being denounced for labor negligence. So her friends suggest other careers, but she says that she has already thought about being so many things, such as biologist, fisherwoman, and researcher, but she does not know which one to choose. In winter, the three friends go to school together and start complaining about the cold, except for Himeno, so Nozomi and Kyuko hug her to keep warm. On the way, Himeno suggests they remember places where they have enjoyed the warmth to distract themselves a little and not to feel the cold. Kyuko remembered the day when they went to visit the mermaids with the whole class during the spring. Nozomi mocks her because it was the day when Kyuko became popular among the mermaid boys, as they were not used to seeing her species. Later, we see a mermaid watching a video in the cafeteria about a device that can help her species move on land, and she tells her friend that she wants to buy it, but he reminds her that it is very expensive. We see the protagonist playing with her cousin named Shino, while her mother and aunt talk about her good relationship with children. Later, we can see her telling a story to the little girl, and noticing that she's a bit hot, she decides to take her to buy some ice cream, meeting Manami and her sisters on the way. After a long talk, the protagonist and Manami decide to go to the park, and out of nowhere, Manami's sisters ask both of them if girls kiss each other, to which Manami tells them that girls don't do that. In that, her classmates appear and approach where they are, and the sisters of Manami tell them what their sister Manami told them, and upon hearing this, the classmates decide to kiss in order to bother their sister. After being scolded by Manami, she explains that girls can kiss each other, but only with the people they consider important, for which Manami's sisters chase Shino to kiss her, but the latter escapes from her. After this huge adventure, Himeno and Shino say goodbye to Manami and her sisters, and go home to spend the rest of the day together. Sometime later, we see Manami preparing something to eat for her sisters, to whom she assigns the responsibility of taking care of the house and her youngest sister, since her older sister had to go to school and their father was at the job. And after Manami leaves the house, the triplets decide to call 6 friends to play at their house. On the other hand, at school, Manami meets with the school board to discuss the future activities, but she was in a hurry, since she wanted to return home to see how things were going with her little sisters. After the meeting, a girl tried to talk to her so that she would stay a while longer, but she refused, explaining that since her grandfather passed away, she always puts her family first, so she ended up going home as quickly as possible. When Manami arrives at her house, she sees that everything is fine, and thanks to a girl who was playing with her little sister. This is how the family is finally reunited, although the triplets tell their family that they had only invited 6 friends, and they were all playing with them, which meant that there was an extra girl who was with the youngest. It is then that the father tells them that it could have been a Zashiki Warashi, who are, in a nutshell, a type of spiritual being belonging to the Japanese folklore who usually look like a child of about 5 or 6 years of age approximately. Changing the scene, we see how Himeno, Nozomi, and Kyuko are traveling on the subway, and suddenly a boy approaches them to give a love letter to the protagonist, who gets nervous and runs away as soon as the train opens its doors without grabbing the boy's letter. After a long walk, the 3 arrive at school, and her friends ask Himeno why she didn't accept the boy's letter, and the only answer her friends got was only the silence of the protagonist. After class, Nozomi and Kyuko meet with Himeno, and again ask her why she ran away from the train that morning, and finally she confessed that it is because she has felt quite insecure about her body since she was a child. Thus, Nozomi proposes that the 3 of them show their bodies in order to help Himeno overcome that insecurity. The next day, they meet the same boy on the subway again, and this time she accepts his letter. Arriving at school, she goes to an empty area to read the letter, but she ends up regretting taking the letter, since the letter only said of things. So when the boy approaches her on the train, she rejects him again and then runs away from here, so she's chased again by her friends. They ask her why she did that again, to which she tells them that the letter talked about her, leaving all of them disappointed by what the boy did, since they thought it was something more romantic. The weekend arrives, and the 3 of them meet at Himeno's house to help Nozomi study mathematics, since she needs to pass the exam. But it is very difficult for Nozomi to learn mathematical formulas, so Himeno motivates her by saying that if she fails, they will be in different years and can never see each other again, so she will feel lonely without her. This motivates Nozomi and tries to study the mathematical formulas so hard, since she will not accept to lose her friend. After the weekend, they return to class but realize that there is too much security everywhere at school. Upon entering the classroom, they notice that there is one more seat, so Kyuko assumes that it is because a new student arrives. In that, a girl enters and introduces herself as Sasu, which is a girl with the head of a cobra snake. Himeno has a hard time adjusting to having Sasu around because she's afraid of snake people, since as a child she saw a horror movie about snakes that left her with a trauma. Himeno wakes up in the infirmary surrounded by her friends who ask her about what happened. The protagonist confesses to them everything about the trauma that she has because of the snake people due to the movie she saw as a child, to which her friends propose to her to watch the movie again, since they believe that now that she is grown up, the movie should look to her like something silly and not something terrifying. In that, Sasu enters and apologizes to the protagonist for having scared her and clarifies that she only tried to be nice to her, since she feels that she cannot fit in with anyone in the school. That is why Nozomi explains the situation to Sasu, and although she did not know about the movie plot, she decides to go with the girls to the science club to see it since she was curious. But this worried the rest since they were afraid to see what would be her reaction to watching a movie about his species. At the end of the movie, both were scared. However, Sasu explains that her species cannot kill others like a real snake because its anatomy does not allow it, since its fangs are not poisonous and its body cannot expand like he does in the movie. This managed to reassure Himeno, so she proposed to be friends with her. This made Sasu so happy that she, without meaning to, scared the protagonist, causing her to faint again from her. Back in the classroom, all the students start asking Sasu questions about her species, asking about her origins, urban legends, reproduction, and how she feels about having the anatomy she has. She answers every one of the questions from her classmates and reveals that everything that has been told about her race are only legends of her ancestors. The next day, the three friends meet Sasu, who was trying to hide, so they decided to approach her and ask her why she was hiding. She tells them that she saw on the news that an American ship was sunk, so she was afraid that people would think that her species was the cause of this. So to calm her down, the three decide to take her to distract herself from that, thus taking her shopping at the mall. The next day, Himeno wakes up late, so she has to quickly get ready for school. When she arrives in her classroom, Nozomi and Kyuko are surprised that she has too long hair, so they tell that to her. The prota explains to them that she can't go to the stylist because it's too expensive, and she doesn't have the necessary money. At that moment, a girl joins the conversation, and they all come up with different ideas to help her to find a hairstyle that makes her show off her beauty. She tells them that she is willing to accept any hairstyle except one that is too short. Manami appears and tells the protagonist that she understands how she felt about having short hair since she once had it that way too, empathizing with her. After school, Kyuko, Nozomi, and Sasu help the protagonist with her hair, and one of them asks her if she is mixed race. They say this because of her red hair, for which the protagonist tells them that her mother's entire family always looks like that. She tells us that this is due to a Centaur princess who was rescued by the samurai and then taken to Japan, being recorded as a historical event. Leaving this whole issue aside, we now see a man named Machida, who receives a call from Kyuko, advising that his father will send the office files later. While for her part, she is helping her father with the organization of all the documents for a newspaper article, and while looking out the window to get distracted, she saw Manami dressed as a priestess, who went to a house to practice exorcism on a cursed box. After finishing the exorcism, she returns home, and when she sees her father cooking, she asks him why he isn't painting, since she knows how much he loves to paint, to which he tells her that he has no inspiration, and all this provokes a discussion about his passion for painting. In the end, Manami tells him to decide between being a good father and taking care of his children or being a painter, but that he can't be both. This left the man thinking, and he remains silent. Days later, Himeno and her friends meet Manami and her sisters, who mistake Sasu for a dinosaur, but her sister scolds them, clarifying that she is a snake person. For this reason, one of the girls asks Sasu to open her mouth, and when she does, they get scared and hide behind her sister, but she tells her not to be afraid, to which Sasu tells Manami that it is better to let the little girls to get closer bit by bit so they can understand her anatomy. Noticing that one of them is sweating, they all propose to go to the pool. Once there, they change into their bathing suits and go out to have fun in the pool. Manami teaches her sister to swim and Himeno talks with Shino. On the other hand, Kyuko notices that Sasu is away from them, so she asks her why she doesn't get into the water, to which she tells her that she's afraid of being in the water since living all her life in Antarctica, she is used to not knowing how to swim and trying. However, the triplets try to help Sasu get into the pool, and she is surprised that she didn't trying. After this, the triplets began to fall asleep, but the older one asked them not to fall asleep since she would not be able to carry them all. It is then that Nozomi, Kyuko, and Sasu decide to help her, and in that, it is revealed to us that Sasu also has a sister, to which everyone is surprised. Sometime later at school, we see how a boy goes to where the protagonist and her friends are to propose that they tell horror stories at night. At first, Himeno refused, but moments later she ended up accepting, since the purpose was for her to get closer to the class president, Tuako. At night, they all go into the club room and sit around a candle to begin to tell horror stories. The first to tell a story is Kyuko, who tells an urban legend about how the sea was founded to do military experiments and ends by scaring Himeno on purpose for a laugh. Sasu was amazed by what, and the rest ask her if her species believes in supernatural things, but she tells them that they don't, because they don't have the creativity to tell stories. The next to tell the story was the boy. He comments that a friend of his came across an already extinct predator on the street despite never having heard of that species, so it was impossible for him to have imagined it. At the end of his story, he manages to scare Tawako, and they all return home. Weeks later, we see the group of girls watching Himeno practice archery in a sport called Yabusame. In one of her shots, she gets distracted and the arrow deflected, so her friends are surprised that she made a mistake. After that, a girl approaches her to scold her and shoots an arrow near her, causing her to get scared. Annoyed, Himeno tells her that it's dangerous to shoot arrows behind people, but the girl just tells her that she's just wasting her time if she keeps missing her shots. Himeno introduces her friends to Ayaka Wakamaki, who goes to the same high school as them, but in a lower grade. Plus, she mentions that she is good at Yabusame and Kyudo. Ayaka walks away from her and tells Kyuko and Nozomi that they should support the protagonist before the tournament, otherwise they might be disappointed. After this, she tries to leave, but Himeno asks her how she did in the Kyudo tournament, to which she replies that she came third and didn't make it to the national tournament, and without further ado, she leaves. Himeno explains to Nozomi that Ayaka always gets carried away by her desire to be the number one, so she always tries to calm her down. So is there that his friend tells her that she has an idea to help Ayaka relax. In the city, as the group is heading back home, Sasu asks Himeno why she practices archery. She explains that centaurs usually have few relatives, so they use the arc academies to meet other centaurs and thus get to know each other. Himeno gets nervous when she hears that her friend asks her if she is referring to the reproduction of the species, for which she clarifies that she does not practice archery with that intention. The next day, the tournament arrives and the protagonist was the first to pass, and she manages to hit all the targets. The next participant was Ayaka, and the protagonist quickly stops her to make her a bet, remembering the idea that Kyuko tells her, and proposes Ayaka to a date if she manages to beat her in the tournament. Ayaka, confused by the bet, goes out to shoot the targets, and although she was nervous at first, she manages to win because she remembered the reward she would get. Later, the two meet up and Ayaka, without hesitation, takes Himeno by the hand so she can do the things she had planned. The protagonist realizes on the way that she is being spied on by her friends, so she simply smiles at them and greets them. We move on to a scene between two mermaid boys looking at women's magazines and swimsuits, in that two mermaids approach them to scold them, since they aren't working, but they answer that they are resting. During the night, all the mermaids gather in front of the public on the beach, and there it's explained to us that the mermaids have a tradition to sing near the beaches, since this makes their god happy and he grants health and fortune to their species. The girl begins to sing, while the entire audience is amazed by the beautiful voice she has. She is surprised to see several white dolphins near her, and the old man comments to her that this means that God approves her voice, which manages to calm her down. Suddenly, the dolphins began to flee, and at that moment, a huge fish came out of the water, proclaiming itself to be the god Tagan himself. Both, scared by what they were seeing, decide to run away because they know that it is an imposter. Then they show us a scene of the imposter monster in front of a ship full of snake people, while they were confused by everything that just happened. The next day at school, Sasu tells her friends that a fish god appeared on the ship she was on, but Himeno tells her that it's impossible since gods no longer exist. Because of this, Nozomi decides to call Minami to explain everything to them, and she, not knowing what to answer, tells them that the gods do exist, leaving the protagonist in doubt. Himeno got a new cell phone and showed her friends a commercial about a flower fragrance with a frog-like man in it. Nozomi tells her that it is bad publicity, and Kyuko warns her that she should not refer to the man in the commercial as a frogman, and Sasu tells her that she should call him French, since he comes from that area. There, she tells them that his name is Jean Rousseau, and that when he was a child he collapsed in the jungle, so some French missionaries found him and educated him in the mammal society, becoming the first amphibian to enter the university, which later would become a renowned politician. Minami overhears the conversation and asks them if they are interested in meeting Mr. Jean, and reveals that he will be visiting the school to give a discourse, so she offers them to be Mr. Jean's welcoming committee. Meanwhile, in a building, we see two businessmen welcoming Jean in the reception room, and he talks to them about statistics, and when the meeting ends, Jean leaves. As one of the businessmen watches the frogman leave, his partner approaches to offer him a towel and water to clean his hands, but the businessman scolds him, saying that his hands are not dirty even though Jean is a frogman. We see Jean boarding his private jet accompanied by his assistant. She tells him what will be the next activities for the day, among which she emphasizes a meeting with the Secretary General of the UN. We see Jean change his uniform and visit a village of his species. He meets with other frogs in a dark room and asks one of them why he is wearing such strange clothes, to which he replies that he dresses like that because he is trying to imitate mammals. Jean tells him that those are battle clothes and reminds them all that they must coexist in peace with mammals, otherwise they would be destroyed as a species, and tells him that his god is only acting out of self-interest. This upset the battle frog, and Jean calms him down by saying that he respects his god, but that doesn't change that what he said is true. The battle frog comments that the mammals have been cheating them and they should reclaim the water and land that belonged to their ancestors. Returning to the school, we see all the students reunited in the theater listening to Jin's speech, while Nozomi and Kyuko were in the kitchen preparing drinks for him. We see Jin in the waiting room, so Minami approaches to offer him the drinks she prepared with her classmates. She tells him that they prepared a tea from the frog's homeland, which surprises him, and when he drinks it, he gets amazed by the taste, although he also ends up burning his tongue. Moving on to a different scene, we see some turrets that begin to at several planes while they drop that gradually destroy the city. During the day, civilians were standing around with their hands on their heads because they were about to be. A child was about to be, but a soldier told the person in charge of the firing squad that the daily quota had already been set at the end of the day. Upon hearing this, the soldier puts away his gun, but approaches the child and knocks him and leaves him unconscious. Then it is shown how a train was on its way carrying several hostages inside, including the child, who asks the others where they are going, and a man answers that they are going to the hell of the earth. When the train stops, they are all sent to a concentration camp, where they will start working as miners until they die of hunger, exhaustion, or being. When it is time to eat, one of the hostages complains that another has received more food than the others, but the soldier replies that it is because of the difference of races. In the evening, all the hostages approach the boy who received more food than the others and try to kill him, but the guards interrupt in time to prevent it. Days go by, and one of the hostages manages to become friends with the guards, and now he gives orders to the other hostages. When he realizes that the child almost fainted from hunger, he takes him to a house to him, but what really ends up happening is that he gives him some of his food, and to continue with his lie, he hits his sack while yelling at it so that no one would notice. He finally reveals to the kid that he only helps him because he can see that he is a good person. One day, like any other, an army arrived at the concentration camp and managed to rescue all the hostages except the child. The kid goes to where his friend was, but ends up finding him since he had been killed by the hostages who were jealous of him. Upon realizing this, they chase after the kid to kill him in the same way, calling him a traitor. The little boy runs to a soldier of the liberating army, and he realizes what is happening, so he protects the boy and in the end proposes to adopt him. Finally, it is revealed that the child in this story is none other than the businessman who received Jean at the reception of his building. Weeks later, the three friends met at a coffee shop, dressed similarly to hide from people, because they were spying on Sasu, who was going on a date with a boy named Nakafumi. They both meet on the street and leave together. While the girls were hiding behind a wall, Himeno asked if it was right to spy on her, and Nozomi replied that they were doing it to prevent Sasu from making a mistake with the boy. This caused the protagonist to want to continue spying on her to prevent that from happening. While they were following Sasu, a man in a black van was also watching the couple with binoculars, and he radioed that there were 3 unidentified girls. The image of the 3 was sent to a database supervised by 2 agents. One of them proposed to investigate them to find out if they did not belong to a organization, but the guy told him that they were just classmates of the target and that it was all a game, so he ordered them to ignore them. The couple went to visit an art museum, and while looking at a painting, Sasu asked if humans enjoy looking at art, to which the boy replied that if it is contemporary art, it would probably bore them. It is then that the boy began to explain to her the history of the art, telling that a long time ago there were few people who could make real art, but that in the modern era, because of the birth of photography, more elaborated images than a painting were captured. This started a crisis where people were looking for another kind of beauty. After this, the couple left, so the girls tried to follow them. They both go to the museum's cafeteria, and as Himeno checks the museum's presentation notebook, she wonders if her friend is really enjoying the date. Nakafumi interrogates Sasu to find out if she's enjoying the tour at the museum, to which she comments that she enjoys it, but in the case of the art, she needs someone to look at it with her. They both continue exploring the place to find more paintings. It is then that Nozomi and Kyuko run ahead, while the protagonist gets distracted by a painting and inadvertently bumps into someone. When she turns to apologize, she is surprised to see that it was Minami and a boy named Omaki. Later, the girls continue chasing the couple, and then they pass near motels, which causes them to misunderstand the situation, as well as the agents spying on them. But everyone was relieved to see that the two were actually on their way to a bookstore. The next day in class, the girls approached Sasu to ask how their date went. Sasu said that she liked the walk, although she didn't understand anything the boy told her about the art, so she asked Himeno her opinion. Then we get to see Minami's point of view. She says goodbye to her sisters to go out with Omaki, but they did not want to let her go on her date. And then she reveals to them that Omaki is actually a woman, and after convincing them, she leaves, leaving her sisters with her dad. On the way, Omaki saw in the distance a man who was harassing some girls, so she told Minami to go and hold his hands so that he would stop bothering the girls. They head to the museum and meet Himeno by chance, who accidentally bumped into Omaki. After Omaki bought chocolates for her sisters, they went to have a coffee. It is then that Mamami tells her father's life, he being a frustrated artist who seeks inspiration through his daughters and who in turn complains about himself for not being able to create an attractive portrait for the people. To which his friend advises her to be rude with his father, so that he can understand that he is an adult and that he should not leave the responsibilities of taking care of his daughters. The next day, they both meet in class, and then Manami thanks Omaki for the words she said yesterday to her, since it helps her father to understand his place in the world. Here we are introduced to Manami's story. While she was taking care of her little sisters, they wanted to go out to play, and they commented that Sue, the youngest sister, was always being taken away, which worried Manami, and she asked them to what they were talking about, to which they told her that once they went to their friend's house and that her dog, named Yoshi, wanted them all to pet him, but after they all gave him affection, he took Sue away like a toy. In addition to this anecdote, Sue's sisters also tell Manami that once a maid's daughter visited them and confused Sue with her sister and wanted to take her home, although everything was cleared up in the end. After this conversation, a friend went to pick up the little girls to play with her, and Manami let them go. We move on to a scene with the protagonist who is walking with Shino while they observe the different flowers and plants in a field. Himeno showed the little girl various types of plants, telling her their functions and their names, chatting like this for several hours. A few days later in the playground of the kindergarten, we see Shino telling her classmates Mi and Maki the names of the plants, remembering everything that Himeno told her about them. A little bit later, already inside the kindergarten, we see how Shino continues explaining other things to her classmates. This time she tells them about geometric figures, comparing them with flowers, since she says that, just like geometric figures, the flowers have different shapes and names as well. They then return to the playground, where Shino shows them more types of flowers, to which Mai and Maki praise her for being so smart, but Shino responds telling them that it's all thanks to her cousin Himeno. The next day, they all attend the kindergarten again, but Maki, instead of going inside the kindergarten, she went to see the flowers and realized that they were gone. So she called her teacher and asked her where the flowers were. The teacher told her that the plants were cut, and just at that moment, Shino arrives and Maki goes to tell her that the plants have disappeared, but Shino cheers her up by telling her that the flowers will grow again, since the seeds must still be underground, and suggests to her that they should see the plants grow throughout the year. Sometime later, at Himeno's house, we see her and Shino making paper figures and explaining to her the different types of triangles and cylinders. Switching scenes to Manami's house, we see Sue, who didn't know how to get her tail out of her clothes, so her sisters reunited to help train her tail, teaching her how to move it in different ways. At that, Manami went to check what they were doing, and seeing them practicing the tail movement, she decided to show them how the different types of tails work and shows them which clothes are the right ones to wear, since, for example, pants are not very comfortable to wear having a tail of 80 centimeters. Additionally, Manami showed them a picture of how she looked when she was a little girl, leaving everyone impressed, because they say that she looks a lot like Sue. Later, Manami's sisters turn on the TV, and there is a contest showing who is the prettiest girl in the world. Sue comments that Manami is the prettiest of all in the world. At that moment, Manami comes through the room with a vacuum cleaner. Sue closes to her and compares her with the contestants from the TV and thinks that she is the prettiest girl in the world. The rest of the sisters tell Manami that she will never be the most beautiful, since there will always be someone prettier than her. All the sisters went to a park looking for a girl who would be prettier than Manami. In that, they found Himeno and her friends. Himeno's friends started playing with all of them, and while one of the sisters was playing with the protagonist, she realized that what they were looking for a pretty girl. So she introduced them to Nozomi. One of the sisters responded to her, saying that she thought that Nozomi was a boy. All the sisters returned home, and Manami asked them if they finally found someone more beautiful than her, and they all denied it. But they affirmed that someday they will find someone prettier than her. To which Manami answers that by that time, they themselves will be the most beautiful girls in the world. Sometime later, we see the protagonist, Nozomi, Kyuko, and Sasu going through a dark dungeon. Nozomi complains that she is getting cold, so she hugs Himeno to warm up and warns Himeno that a monster is waiting for them. The protagonist doesn't believe her, and at that moment, a giant rabbit appears in front of them. Himeno fires an arrow, but the rabbit dodges it, so Nozomi parries the rabbit's attacks with her sword. Meanwhile, Kyuko uses a fire spell that she slowly casts. When the monster touches the fireball, it generates an explosion, roasting the rabbit completely, dropping 2 golden coins. Although somewhat disappointed by the reward left by the rabbit, the group continued advancing and encountered several armed skeletons and a specter, whom the Prota and Sasu defeated, leaving 3 silver coins. The group continued down the dungeon while talking, and by accident, Himeno triggers a trap, which drops a sticky green liquid and traps everyone, except for Kyuko. Nozomi asks Kyuko to look for a quick spell, so she sets out to look for some spell in her book, and as she searches for it, she explains that the green slime won't kill them, but it will do impure things to them. Sasu convinced Kyuko to use a saltwater spell to defeat the green slime, which Kyuko agreed to. By using that spell, she caused the slime to break into pieces, just like the girl's clothes. The group's adventure continued until they reached the door of the last boss, and upon entering, we see the queen of the dungeon, which is Manami. She mentions that in order to be defeated, they have to answer correctly what her secret is, to which Kyuko ironically tells her that the answer is that she fills her. Manami is surprised that she found out so quickly and ran away. Suddenly, an earthquake shook the whole place, and the whole dungeon started to collapse, so the group of girls ran away too. Later at school, the girls talk to the event manager to complain about wearing bikinis in a dungeon, to which the event manager admits that they're right and explains that she tried to recreate a fantasy RPG game even though it came out bad. Then we go to a scene where Himeno is watching an arm wrestling contest. She was watching a duel between Manami and a student. Where the duel began, both were on par with strength, but Manami managed to win easily, explaining that she exercised every day. The tournament kept going until it's Sasu's turn. Nozomi explained to her that the easiest way to win is by looking at the opponent and making him nervous, but Sasu misunderstood all and ended up losing. The next one was the Prota. She questioned why all her classmates were taking the tournament so seriously if it's just a game. Himeno's opponent was one of the best kendo practitioners and they were evenly matched at the beginning, but the protagonist ended up losing, but everyone did not believe the result and decided to repeat the duel, telling Himeno to take the competition more seriously. And as soon as the duel began, she won, leaving her opponent despondent. At the end of the entire tournament, only the best four remained, among them Himeno, Kyuko, Manami, and Inukai. Kyuko faces Manami, and although both were even, Kyuko ended up losing due to an oversight. But on the other hand, her friend Himeno won against Inukai, which left the protagonist and Manami as finalists. The final duel began. Manami and Himeno faced each other, and at the beginning, the protagonist thought of letting Manami win. However, seeing her classmates' motivation, decided to give everything, and in that way won the tournament, showing us that the winner was the Princess Himeno, and that's how this anime ends.